Are you some kind of adventurer going on some sort of adventure in a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy universe? Have you just got 10 to 15 gold from your background? Have you got tight pockets, you don't really want to spend very much of it? In which case this video is probably for you, because I'm going to be talking about items you can buy for your characters that are poor as fuck, barely have a couple of silver spare, because adventuring gear is so criminally underused, and it has such a wide array of uses that I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so first off we'll talk about the Whiststone. It costs a single copper coin, it only weighs about a pound. You chuck this thing in the bottom of your adventuring backpack and it might come up at some point. You can use it to sharpen your weapons, or if your GM has a dungeon and there's a rancid, smashed up, damaged short sword, you could sharpen it down using this Whiststone into a fully functional dagger. It turns this useless piece of junk into a 5-10 gold item. You can use it in roleplay. You could say your character is sat by the campfire sharpening their blade when you're making conversation. It adds conversation piece. People can talk to you about where you got your blade from, why you like to sharpen it. It might be a habitual thing for your character. Maybe it's a flaw that they always have to sharpen their weapon before and after a kill. You can even use it in roleplay in the sense that you're intimidating people. If you pull out your blade and you start sharpening it, it adds an element of a threat that wasn't there before than if you just pull out your sword and start wobbling it around like a shitty balloon. It's just a chunk of abrasive stone, so it has a lot of uses in the fact that it is just a fucking pound of stone. You can throw it through windows, you can club people with it, you can put it inside of a sock or a sack and you can swing it around and you can hit people with it, or you could just sort of rub it against people's faces to make them extremely uncomfortable. Okay, so let's talk about sacks. The most common use for sacks is probably going to be to carry the loot you find in your dungeons or adventuring days. You can carry X amount, but you can push, pull, drag, lift twice that amount, so you basically just drag around a load of sacks behind you filled with awesome items. In order to understand just how good sacks are compared to say backpacks, you need to actually compare the two. So backpacks weigh 5 pounds, they cost 500 copper, and they carry the exact same amount, technically 15% less since the backpack weighs so much. The one thing that always makes me laugh about the Dungeoneers pack, which is a starting pack that most classes have access to pick, is that the Dungeoneers pack weighs about 62 pounds, but the backpack that you get with it can only carry 30 pounds. And of course you can strap things to the side of the backpack, but what 32 pounds of gear out of this list are you actually going to strap to the side of your backpack? The rations alone are 20 pounds, the water skin could maybe go on the side, the rope goes on the side obviously, but you're going to start strapping 10 pythons and 10 torches all to the side of your backpack. Like that isn't really possible, is it? At that point you're not even wearing a backpack, you've just got an inside out sack with a load of things tied to the back of you. Some of the more interesting uses for a sack could be to tie it over somebody's head so they can't see where they're going, they can't target you with you can see spells. You could wear it as clothes if you're desperate and naked, just cut some holes in it, it doesn't even look that bad. And you can waterboard people with them if you want them to feel really uncomfortable. Chalk is a pretty good piece of adventuring gear. It only costs a copper per piece, and technically you can carry as much as you want because it doesn't have any weight. The typical use for chalk is to use it to write things, signs, directions, anything on stone. Get yourself a flat piece of stone, use it as a budget chalkboard, write stuff on it, rub it off. Chalk's at its best not when it's in stick form, but when you grind it up into a powder. So think of the athletes at the Olympics when they do gymnastics, when they do fucking stone lifting, when they start throwing shit. They chalk up their hands because it's a grip agent. It's really good to get advantage on athletics checks. Say you're fighting someone and they turn invisible, you can use this ground up chalk powder, throw it in the air, some of it will fall to the floor, some of it will linger in the air. If the creature so much as tries to move, it'll bump into some of the powder and it's extremely sticky, so it sticks to them and they're fucking visible now. Now these next two are actually incredibly niche, so bear with me, but chalk powder can actually be used to clean and polish surfaces. Not that you would ever really care about that in a D&D game, but it may come up and it's worth thinking about that as an option. In addition to this, and even rarer and even less likely to come up, is that chalk when applied to soil raises its pH level and makes it less acidic. So if the DM happens to describe a farm and it happens to be struggling because its soil happens to be too acidic, you can buy a fuckload of chalk, grind it up, sprinkle it on the field, and it should fix the problem. It will probably never happen, but it's worth keeping in mind. Another great item you can lug around is wheat. So it only costs a copper coin per pound of wheat you buy. Obviously it weighs a pound. You can use this to feed livestock, which I'll cover later on in the video. You can feed yourself with the wheat. You can boil it until it's soft, you can grind it into flour. There are so many foods you can make out of just wheat. You could pretty much exchange wheat for rations, and when rations cost 50 copper per day, and wheat will cost maybe 1 to 2 copper a day, you're looking really good from that. You can buy a bunch of wheat and create a small bale, create like a small wall. So if you're ever building your own battlefield to prevent an invasion, or you're planning to attack somewhere and want cover,
if you're able to manipulate the battlefield before you arrive and start fighting, buy a fuck ton of wheat, build a little wheat wall, and if they start shooting arrows, the arrows are just gonna fucking sink into the wheat. So next up is a bag of flour, where you can get a pound of flour for 2 copper coins. You could feed yourself with it in the same way that you could feed yourself with wheat. You can throw it at people that are invisible to make them visible, and unlike chalk, you get a fuck ton of flour. Like, a pound of flour is gonna last you a long time if the only use for it is throwing it at invisible people. Flour is a budget fog cloud in the right circumstances, because you could explode an entire pound of flour. It will fill the air, and it's going to slowly fall, it's going to get in people's eyes. They're not going to be able to see anything. In addition to this, flour is a very combustible material. So it could create large flashes of light, quick bursts of fire, big distractions, big attention drawing things that you could distract a load of commoners. You could use it as a borderline flashbang in a room to scare people. And finally, you can make Play-Doh, salt dough, cloud dough, whatever kind of dough you want to make to fill holes, create sculptures, craft a really shit budget weapon that you could club somebody with. Next up on the list is soap. It costs 2 copper, and again, it doesn't have a listed weight, which technically means it has no weight, so you could carry a million soaps. The uses for soap include staying clean and fresh. You're actually presentable to nobles without needing a wizard, bard, or sorcerer with prestidigitation. You could use it to interrogate people, stick some soap in their fucking mouth. You can make weapons out of soap. You can stick it in a sock, swing it around, club somebody to death with an improvised weapon. You can also use soap to send secret hidden messages. So what you would do is you would write down your message on a piece of parchment, fold it up, seal it somehow, maybe with another piece of parchment. You'd melt down the soap, put the soap in some kind of soap-shaped container whilst it's in liquid form. Then you just push the parchment thing to be like in the middle of the soap, let the soap harden and reseal. Obviously you can't see through the soap, so no one from the outside looking in can see. Successfully hidden a message that you can drop off on somebody's desk as a gift, or you can throw through somebody's window. There's lots of stuff that you can do with soap that you couldn't do with an envelope to make it not look like a hidden message. The next thing I'd consider buying, as ridiculous as it sounds, is a chicken, or multiple chickens, depending on how crazy you are. So you can feed them the aforementioned wheat or flour. Then they don't take a lot to feed, and they have a lot of use. So first of all, it acts as like a pet or a mascot for the party. The basically never used skill animal handling comes into play a lot more often when everyone's rolling to pet the chicken, see who its favourite friend is, all that kind of stuff. It can add a lot to your character, so instead of being this fighter class pirate person who's amazing, blah blah blah, you can be a really shit pirate that has a fucking chicken instead of a parrot, and like, that's your shtick. More formally useful is that you can harvest its eggs for food, you can harvest its chicken shit for manure, or you can use it as a weapon. You can torture people by fucking pouring it in their nose. Oh god, that's fucking disgusting, I can't even believe I said that. Chickens have feathers, which, believe it or not, are used as casting components in quite a few spells. They're also used for budget quills, budget lockpicks, to tickle your enemies, to put them in a sack, make your own pillows. And my favourite thing about having a chicken is there is a spell that exists called Speak with Animals, and it's not commonly taken or used, but if you pick that up and you have a pet chicken, and you've tamed this chicken and it's like it's a friend of yours, you put the chicken on watch, the bandits aren't going to assassinate a chicken thinking that it's going to act as a witness, but you can talk to it, ask it what it's seen, you can communicate it, tell it to keep watch and screech and caw if anyone tries to come in the cave after you and cut you off. You can leave it on night watch. Next up, for 2 copper, it's weightless, it's the ink pen. You'd think it'd be useless without ink, but you can just use the blood of your enemies after you kill them, bottle some up in a flask, and it functions just as well, if not better than ink. Bit red coloured, but most people aren't going to notice. You can use it as an improvised weapon, stab somebody in the neck. It means your rogue is technically never unarmed because he can get sneak attack with the finessey, daggery state of the pen. You could use it as a lockpick in a really bad situation. And you can actually roll up pieces of parchment. I don't know if anybody you know fucking did this in school, where everyone thought they could cheat by rolling up bits of paper inside of their pens and unravelling them and then rolling them back into the pens. But basically you can roll up a piece of paper, stick it inside of the ink compartment of the pen, and you can deliver secret messages or take information you shouldn't have into a place under the guise of, oh, it's just a pen, I just accidentally left it on his desk, I didn't know that there was battle plans in there. The final item I'm going to recommend to you guys is a flask or tankard for 2 copper coins. I'm going to recommend the flask. Tankards are not so useful. With a flask, it's not transparent, so nobody knows what's inside. Whatever you're picking up in your adventuring world, from fresh water to the blood of your enemies to fuel your ink pen, all of that's fine. Even if you've got acid or spider venom, you can just store all of these weird things that you normally wouldn't be able to take with you. You can use it as an improvised weapon because it's a solid chunk of metal. You can just club somebody upside the head with it. It's really going to hurt, and it's always going to be directly on your belt at your side, so it's never going to be out of reach. It's never going to be hidden in the bag of holding and you have to spend an action to pull it out. So that's all for this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys got some ideas. All these items together come to a total cost of 15 copper coins. There's really no justification or no reason not to get creative with what items you can carry, with what things you're going to bring with you, with what your starting adventuring gear can be. Every single background in the game gives at least 5 gold, I believe, so there's no reason not to get a bunch of cool stuff. Hopefully there's more videos like this in the future, but maybe not in this exact style, because this particular one has been in the works for about 4 weeks and it's really fucked me up making this, so I hope it does well and I hope the effort was worth it. But thank you guys for joining me on this D&D video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!